record this. How many of you guys have noticed a big change when hiring millennials or Gen Xers versus hiring up? Okay. How many of you are still reliant on your older Gen Xers to operate your business, and you can't find anyone to build underneath them? Okay.
Me. Yeah.
All right.
Can I say something? I had to change my attitude because when these guys came in,
yeah, you can.
they had issues. They
No,
they were offended a lot,
it's
and I
good
said,
to know what
you
to
know
do
what,
with
they're
it.
gonna.
Yeah.
Well, here's
Go ahead.
they're gonna do the things I want them to do. I'm not gonna kowtow to them. But you know what? I realized very quickly that I had to change my mindset, and I had to approach them on a level they could understand instead of being so, in my own head and not changing.
So what you're saying right there was my approach as well. So like I got myself involved with the onboarding first, but what happened, okay, is it totally backfired on me. Totally went left. So when you're onboarding, let's say a laborer, let's say a second hand, okay? What's that do to your senior guys? What message are you sending? Right?
Yeah. Why didn't we get training? Yeah.
Right. Not only that, but then it opened the door for them to come directly to me, which was a nightmare. Like I've got, I had 50 staff. You have to have insulation from the men. Okay. You reach a point in your business that it no longer serves the men or you, all right, to have that working relationship. When you bring in middle management, when you have, supervisors and foremen, like you can't afford to damage those relationships by putting your foot in the wrong place. Okay. So like, again, as you grow your business, you realize that you have to learn to work through people. Okay. You no longer can like directly, you have to go through an operations manager. You have to go through, the other people that you have in front of you. And if you haven't built a culture already with onboarding, you're in for a very, very expensive, painful lesson, because what's going to happen is it's going to pull you back in all the time, because the senior guys don't know how to onboard. You haven't equipped them with the tools, all right? They don't have a system. They don't have a process. They're not incentivized, okay? And they see the new hire as a threat. So it's like a bad transplant, okay? So no matter what, the organ's going to die, all right? And that's what we were seeing. Because it creates this bureaucracy. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about how I started to solve it, and kind of, where the worst of it was for me, and then what we need to look at going into the future and how much easier it is. So before we get started on that, I want to make some business sense here. Okay. So I had an evaluation of our business. We get them done now yearly, just to check where we are, and what the business is worth. And one of the big things that they are now looking for in contracting businesses is they're looking at the amount of opportunity you have in your recruitment hiring pipelines. Okay, so they're investigating. It's really like it was really eye-opening for me this year to see where all of this is paid off. One of the things that got me a 2x return, all right, over the last 2 years, is that all of the training, all of the onboarding became an asset to the business. Okay, like on paper asset. And here's the other thing. You guys might have experienced a lot of change going through the deflation, right? Like we're having deflate men, we're having like through COVID, they kind of got away with murder. The wages went through the roof. Now we have to deflate all of that. Okay. Big problem, right? We still have a labor crisis. Okay. But it becomes even more compounded, right, when you can't keep up with the amount of hires that you make. So let me give you a perfect example of this. We had to make a switch from employees to subcontractors this year, a big switch. And what it meant was essentially, letting go of 22, 23 employees, all right, and then bringing in 2 or 3 sub crews. But I did something really smart. I made their staff, whoever they hire, go through my onboarding program. So they're indoctrinated to me. Okay. What we found, all right, is the subcontractor locked in, loves it. Like, again, they can now hire at like on command. All right. And on top of that, you know, as guys come up, even guys that we would never consider really hiring before, all of a sudden are being successful with these subcontractors, and we're seeing them grow. But the asset is in the ability to have like the assembly line, right? So the real asset is in that training and having all of your ducks in a row, having all of your places done, having all of your job descriptions clear, having like all of that combined actually takes the leverage that any employee or subcontractor has on a normal contracting business. So they literally, that's in, like, I can show you our assessment, and my, like, they look at, like, if you have senior staff, okay, if you have senior production managers, that is a big liability in a sale or a sale of a business, okay? Because nobody likes change. They know that, you know, there could be some weakness there, but what they're really looking at is like, how quickly could you replace somebody, right? How quickly can you, you know, like, would the business be out of business if you lost your, you know, key employees, right? If you can prove without a shadow of doubt, and again, this is what we're going to be talking about today, your evaluation for your business goes through the roof, like 2x, right? So like, you know, you can get 2 times rev on that, on an evaluation score. All right. Because basically, and the auditor said it to me in a really kind of clever way that stuck with me. He said, you know, contracting businesses have 2 major assets, right? We're in the resource business. Okay. You have the resource of manpower. Okay. But everybody knows that that's, like, that also can be a big liability, all right, that sits on your books. When a company can turn that into an asset, so it can transfer into an asset, right? So instead of being seen as a liability, like most of these guys coming, like most of these equity firms, they devalue all of your employees. You don't get anything for, like, you can't buy people, all right? And they basically assume that they're going to be doing all, like, they're going to lose half or 30%, 40%, I think is average for a company when you do an ownership transfer. Okay. But there is a factor there for, like, what I'm explaining. If you have strong pipelines, if you have backlog, it's just like MRR, it's just like monthly recurring revenue. If you can prove that you have replacements for all the staff you have in place, and a training program and a mentorship program, and you have a way to move them up through ranks, and again, you have all of your evaluations in place and everything else, they come in, and like, that's becoming even more valuable than what you have in backlog. All right. Because remember, what these guys are doing is they're coming in, they're buying up 5 or 6 companies at a time in an area, and then they're putting them all together. But they're in the resource business. How are they getting? Every business has the same problem, right? Is how do we get more resources? What are the resources? It's your manpower. Okay. Below that, though, is how do we take very average people and get them to produce extraordinary results consistently, right? How do we do that? Okay. How do we move beyond hiring biases? How do we, you know, protect ourselves against getting over leveraged by staff, right? So again, you know, one of my experiences has been, as I've been less and less involved in my business, to the point now where, like, most people in the business that they don't even know who I am. They've never met me. All right. So you can imagine I have concerns, I have fears, you know, things that keep me up at night. Like, you know, is my operations manager going to take over the business and, you know, cut me out, or like all of those things. And when I really evaluated, and kind of the way that I keep myself on the ground about it is, they couldn't. Number one, we're, you know, above that size level, but number two, I own the real assets. All right. So like, if they were to go and try and replicate what we're doing, okay, they don't own those assets. They don't have the processes in place. They don't have those systems in place. Even if they tried to like steal them from me, they would be fragmented, right? Again, because I've compartmentalized things and been able to keep people separate. And like I said, you have to learn to work through people. Okay. But at the same time, you have to protect yourself both ways, right? So like, again, do I let a salesperson do production? Fuck no. Never, ever, right? Salespeople are cut off immediately after the sale is made. Okay. So for you guys, I want you to really pay attention to this next little piece that I'm going to share with you. Okay. There are areas in your business as you become less and less involved that you have to be very, very careful of doing. Okay. And, you know, obviously in your financials, in your finance, all right, you're going to have, you know, people that are overseeing your books. You're not going to just have one bookkeeper that does all the bookkeeping. That's a liability if I've ever seen one, right? Like, and again, money can be taken. Lots of things happen. Like there's lots of ways, but you have to start to put these controls in place now, because if you grow to the size where, hey, you know what? I can put this business on autopilot, or like I can get ready to sell it. All of these things come to the surface very quickly, right? Once you're removed from the business, okay, what happens? All right. Can you trust everyone to be honest? Okay. Here's another way to look at it. All right. Most people who end up stealing from a business, all right, are usually pretty close. They're like family members and stuff like that. And if most of them that end up being charged or that are criminally done with it, like they didn't start off with the intention to steal from you. It just happened, right? So, and in their mind, they justified it. Okay. And your employees and staff will too. Okay. So when we think about onboarding, we also have to think about long-term, like when I design a position. So for example, a production manager, a production coordinator, would I have a production manager and a production coordinator? Anybody think of the reasons before that?
Why,
It's almost
why
redundant.
wouldn't you, why would you have both, or why
Yep.
wouldn't you have both?
Yep. Why would I have that?
I don't know. So they can run everything from A to Z. I mean, there's limited knowledge when you separate them.
Purely for security for me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I have two areas that are problematic. Number one, you can't let any one person write the checks, right? We know that not one person like can have full control. There's always got to be a plan and control in place. Now, the same thing goes with projects. Okay. If you don't have two that are working, you know, basically you have an inside, like I'll give you an example, like an inside coordinator or somebody on the field that deals with the men every day, but you're separating them from the contract. So the guy that's doing that's not negotiating with the customer on contract. All right. So now I've created a separation there where the client deals with the project manager from the office. All right. Or we call them operations manager. And that's who's got the contracts. Like that's who's running, and giving the instructions. My coordinators, though, all right, have limited damage they can do to me. Okay. So again, even if they tried to take a crew, even if they tried to, like whatever, it's not going to phase us. Right. And there's early indicator signs that we've implemented into the business. Now, again, when we think about the roles that we need to hire for, okay, a lot of times we try to go for that one-stop, do-it-all guy, all right? And you end up opening yourself up to this embezzlement, all types of issues. And again, like I said, most of the time, they don't start off with the intent to have that happen. It happens, right? You put enough, you put enough temptation in front of somebody and they're going to take it. All right. So for us, we look out for those opportunities. We make sure that there's, proper controls in place, and we don't give anybody that opportunity. Right. So again, think about where you are in your business and think about the roles you want to design. The other thing is a lot of people, especially as they're trying to grow quickly, they neglect really understanding their own job descriptions. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And how do you actually know if the person that you've hired is performing the tasks and performing the job that you have hired them to do? How is that if you don't have visuals on that, how can you grow and expand? What is can we drive our car down the highway the wrong direction with our eyes closed? Probably not a great idea, right? So when you're thinking about the same thing. If you plan to be out of your business, and believe me, it can happen quickly, right? Like, let's say 2, 3, 4 years. It takes roughly about a year of restructuring or more if you have a good plan, all right, to actually remove yourself from that business. Now, here's another piece of information that I think that you should all consider in terms of how to structure and how to build this. Don't wait until don't wait on this. All right, start implementing it now. And here's a big reason why. All right, you want to be able to take the most average of person. All right, let's just say a kid out of school can be a coordinator, right? No stress. Why? Because I beat the market. All right. Number two is I'm isolating them from our lead trades, our project manager. I'm also doing something else that's I never put the same age groups together. Okay. So I know a couple of things over the years. I hate to say it, but I'm a roofer by trade. I learned to take people with certain addictions and pit them against each other. All right. And it sounds absolutely terrible, but you have to learn to work through people. Okay. So you don't want two people that essentially are that can collude against you. Okay. You don't want to even put that opportunity out there. That's your fault. You left that open for a security risk. So what do I do to do that? My coordinators, age group. All right. 25 to like 40-ish. All right. Project managers, they're like 45 to like 60, right? And I'm looking for very specific personality types in those roles. Okay. Now, the next thing I do is I have a rule. I trust, but I check. All right. Everything that we do comes down to a job description. And it's not like a generic job description where we have no way to track or measure any point of it. All right. This is the big difference. Everything that you put in that job description, like I rather you call it something else than a job description, because I think job descriptions are outdated and they don't work. All right. Job descriptions are like basically your wish list, right? You're writing to Santa. I wish you could do this. I wish you could do that. But how do you know if that person's actually able or capable of doing those things? Like, what's the definition of that? Right? So let's take some examples here. I want to share with you just a couple ones that I was working on recently.
Hey
Okay.
Jay, while you're doing that,
Sure.
what did you mean when you said you take like maybe two ex-druggies and pit them against each other? What do you
It
mean by
sounds
that?
terrible. So I used to take the alcoholic and the crackhead, and I would put them like we did new construction subdivision. This is many years ago. The alcoholic hated the crackhead. Why? Because he was a crackhead. Now the crackhead went to work all the time and never missed a day, but the alcoholic was more detailed, right? So what I would do is put them basically together working
Oh,
on the same thing, so they would fight each other rather than, and I would get the best of both worlds, right? Like it's pretty sad, but like I knew what to expect. Like an alcoholic, like they all say they're coming in on the weekend, they would never show up. The crackhead,
yeah.
I'd have to be there on Sunday to make sure he's not stealing bundles, right? Like, it's just the way it was.
Yeah.
And especially in roofing and like what we were doing. So like I just learned those kind of things. And as I've grown my business, it doesn't change. Like you take the addiction part out of it, for example, apply it to sales. I hate to say it, and I'm just going to be honest, we're all contractors here. There's ugly side to contracting, but the best sales reps I have, they have an addiction. All right. And I know they do. They all do. They have a gambling addiction. They have, they have a drinking issue. They have like, it's very rare that you will find someone that's very good in that role, especially in that age group, that doesn't kind of have that. You know what I mean? It's just, it comes with the personality type. And I always say they're one toxic trait away from being in jail, right? Like literally. So like all salespeople in my eyes, like again, I know it sounds terrible and it's not the nicest thing, but it's the truth, right? Like I've been doing this long enough. I hope that changes in the future, but like the reality is if you brought a normal person in to do sales, your business would crash. Like they just don't have any drive. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what to say. Like they're there for a 9 to 5. Like that's not a person for sales. Like very rarely. I've met maybe one or two in my life that don't have like serious addictions, one way or the other, right? So, anyways,
I got it.
hope that answers your question, as bad as it may sound. Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned one thing that's super interesting to me, and I'm starting to believe it more and more, that like
Mhm.
within 1 year, I could potentially remove myself from a lot of the day-to-day operations.
Absolutely, man. And again, it happens very quickly because you hit this point of break right now. What it's going to come down to, and again, listen to what I'm saying. When you learn to work through people, all right, that's the game. That's game over. So when you stop, like once your business has the systems in place, and this is what I learned, like when I focused in and like I nailed the onboarding, it was like the first kind of aha going like, holy shit, I can manufacture manpower. Like I can bring people from other countries, train them, and like they're drilled. Like it's the same thing. You go from one crew to the next crew to the next crew, like, and we're known for that. Like there's no difference. They do all the details the same. They like, and again, how much time did I put in it? Like we have a system that we use. I didn't have to put my time into any of it. And we were just like, again, we can scale up, we can scale down. But what that opened the door for is more people wanted to work for me. All right. All of a sudden I have a pick of talent. I have people, my next one was our operations manager that came to us. And he was from a big company, had a lot of like credentials and stuff. And again, I was prepared for that. And that was my move. Right. Once I got him to actually enforce all of these, things that we were, operationally kind of a little wobbly on, everything just like tightened up. And all of a sudden the day came and I was like, fuck, they literally didn't want me there anymore. Like there was nothing more I could fix. They just wanted me to leave. And I was causing more damage. I'd come in and break things and like be in the way. They just wanted me out of there. Right. And that's kind of like where I got into the coaching, and like nothing prepares you for that, by the way. When you do get to that point, you better have a plan for your next summit, because I didn't. And it was the stupidest, loneliest point in my life. Like I walked around like a lost child, and I was just like, everyone's like, oh, it would be great. We all imagine like life on the beach. Like it's not like that. It's not, right? And it's even colder when the business doesn't need you anymore. Like no one prepares. Like think about it. How many of us have literal trauma and like bonds to our business? Our emotions are tied in. Our whole lives are in those businesses, right? Like, I mean,
Now,
again, you put 20 years into something, a lot of you is tied to all of it, right? So like you have to cut all those ties. And this is what I'm talking about here as well. Those emotional ties, even if it's just doing sales, right? You got to fire yourself from the role. You got to fire yourself, right? So again, as you get these roles defined, as you get them KPI'd, as you learn to use your system to actually, call the score, and everyone knows the score, that's where you become the most important, least important person. And you just, again, it's rinse and repeat. I went from production to sales. All right. And then it it literally, like once I got it right at the middle management level, it just reverberated down. Like to the point where like our field guys are capable of doing SOPs, right? Like they know. Like again, it just got it happened fast, right? Like within a year. From like 50 guys disorganized, and this is where it all started from, was this onboarding. I shit you not. All right. Like obviously the money and the pricing and everything, but like learning to get everybody to move the same direction at the same, like to be in sync, that was the key. All right. And that's where you see real culture get built. Like if you're struggling with culture, it's usually because we have conflicting messages. We have conflicting leadership, right? It's a part of your growth crisis. You're going to have a leadership crisis, right? Once you get through that leadership crisis, it's autonomy. Okay. So like in your growth, like if you're looking at the growth model of every business, and I'll just show you this really quick in what I'm talking about.
Quick
Every
question. Did
biz
you put all your existing employees back through the onboarding then?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. And we update the train, like, so whenever we have new training, they're required to do it, and they have to get a new certificate for it, right? So like if we've changed something, everybody takes it, right? Now I'm gonna get into like the details of how to do these trainings, because the simpler you make them, like 2-3 minutes, and now with AI, like you've seen how we're making those videos, like that's the way to do it. You're trying to keep it to 15 minutes a day. right? And you just build onto it. And like, that's the key. Don't try and push it beyond that 15 minutes a day because you lose people, right? It's not effective. So, and then we pair them up with a buddy, right? That's been the big one. So let me show you kind of what I'm discussing here. Okay. So this was the exact kind of journey that I was at. All right. So where I'm talking about, where most of you guys are going to find your resistance. So like at 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, you go through first the leadership crisis. Okay. So this is when you need to bring in middle management. This is when you need to bring in people that manage the people below you. Okay. So like, a project manager, a salesperson, like now we're going to have a leadership crisis. Okay. Because you still want to be the leader and call the shots. All right. But you're a dictator. Okay. So, and if you don't have your systems in place, it creates this huge like vortex where no one knows who's leading what, right? And then things get out of line very quickly. It just like you struggle in that position, and I did for like a year or two. And what ended up happening is I took a step back, right? I stopped trying to enforce my leadership style because I had to build my leaders up behind me. Like I couldn't be the leader anymore, right? I had to be the CEO. I had to be the visionary, right? So this led to the next thing, which is autonomy. All right. The autonomy crisis comes when your systems aren't in line with those leadership and people. Okay. So like if your system, for example, is out of line. Okay. So let's say that your job description tells them that they only have to do 4 things, but your system, requires them to wear 3 different hats. Okay. Or they don't know how to use it, or the software doesn't work for them, or there's all these other, like, that's the autonomy that I'm referring to. And again, it's getting people to work with systems in a simple way where they're motivated by it rather than like it's a drag. Because if they hate doing it and they don't want to do it, it'll never work out. If it's outside of their zone of genius. So like, for example, if you want a really great like coordinator, production manager, foreman, whatever you want to call them, all right, and you want to stick them behind a desk, big fucking problem. Big problem. They don't even know how to open their damn emails, right? Like that's about as far as you can get them in a lot of cases, right? Now that is changing a bit, but like if you have a complicated, PO process, if you have a complicated like, billing and, all those kind of things, and you don't have clear policies, clear procedures that have been trained to everybody, right? And you don't have backups to those people. And this is the key with the onboarding. It's all going to come around in a second, is that anybody can take that training. So like, again, you can train an admin to be the coordinator, and you should be, all right? Because the next thing is going to be the control crisis. That's what I went through. That's where it all came together for me, right? Is holy shit. Like I've got to have a backup to the backup to the backup plan here. All right. Because if one of these things fail, all right, it literally will pull the whole business back to a point where like, I don't have any control. Like today, like if I had a mutiny and everyone walked out, that's game over. Right?
Yeah, but like that's really rare for everybody to walk out.
For sure. So, but again, I'm not here to take risk. All right. I am a risk mitigator. I don't like, I need to sleep at night. Right. So my job, and again, I have 2 roles that I still play in the business. The first one is always manage my risk. Always watch my ass. Okay. So that means things like control, all right, are, the way that we handle finance, right? Again, I went open book, top management knows profitability and all that, but like nobody can sign a check, right? Nobody, like I can't even sign a check in my business. Like I couldn't go in and sign a check in my business right now and cash it. All right. They need 2 signatures. Okay. Same thing with purchase orders. Like, again, these are the kind of things that you run into where you have to create delineation lines. Okay. So again, big mistake. A lot of times you will take a sales rep or somebody that, may become the sales manager and start getting them to do production things. Okay. Not in any, that's like, no matter what, that's like putting Camptation in front of, because they're running the business for you. You know what I'm saying? So like what you have to do is create people that are dependent on the role in the system, not people that are, you know, basically doing, you know, what they like. You can't rely on those people entirely. And there's got to be a stop loss, right? So for example, yeah, go ahead.
So like say, okay, so like look at it from like an engineering perspective. You're a business engineer, okay?
Yep.
And you want to do a risk mitigation.
Yep.
And you want to have redundancy of people within a system in a situation where if one individual doesn't work out, you have redundancy. So you might take a revenue hit, but you won't go into a crisis phase.
That's right. You never ever go back to crisis. So it's really about managing the leverage. Okay. So every single person has a form of leverage in your business. Okay. So anybody that you invite into your world, into your environment, or like is a part of your team has a piece of leverage. Now you can have positive leverage or negative leverage. Now they become negative very quickly. So for example, all right, has anybody had the experience where they've given a project manager like the ability to sell jobs, or the project manager decided to start their own business, got that crazy idea in their head? Right?
Yeah, I've had that.
Of course.
Yeah.
How many months did they survive in your business knowing they were leaving, planning their plot to go in and leave and run their own business? And what did that cost you? And then what was the collateral damage that come from it? All right. So here's the thing. Here's the harsh like reality when you want to move for that. Remember, I told you have to work through people, right? So the idea here is that you have to create delineation. So again, the field staff report to the project manager. The project manager reports to the controller, reports to the like, and you don't have the controller going down and bypassing the project manager to go to the next level. Okay. A lot of companies will do that, right? And you can't do that if you want to have, again, and it does, here's the thing.
So
yeah, go ahead.
As a business owner, I own the marketing assets. I own the content. I own the ad campaigns, right? Yep. So I own that, right? And because I own that, I got a steady stream of people that want to buy my offer from my business. Okay.
Right.
Let me finish this thought, okay? Mm-hmm. And then I have enough salespeople, so there's no redundancy in salesperson. So if you fuck around with the prices, you don't close, no problem whatsoever, okay? So that's the sale. I own the marketing assets. I run a sales team. On the flip side of it, I have two project managers. So I have an operations manager and a project manager that can become an operations manager, right? And both of these individuals are not what I would call salespeople.
Yep, that's right.
So at that point, the project managers, because they're very they're almost accountant type people. They're very data entry engineering type people. They don't have the aptitude to want to go out there and close deals.
Yeah,
they'd rather have the job.
It's the crackhead and the drunk, right? It's the same thing. So you're offsetting the personality types. Now here's where the control element comes through. You have another major system in there that you're not accounting for. So marketing and sales is the exact same as recruiting and hiring. Okay. If you can remember that and you run those two things with the same principles, all right, you control the guys coming in. So the leverage goes away. So any one of them can over leverage you if you don't make it clear. Like, for example, like our whole upper management knows how many people we have in backlog waiting to replace everybody. Like they know how quickly we can, and we've focused on it as a metric. How quickly can I take somebody from not knowing a damn thing about our company to being like fully indoctrinated, uniformed, out in the field, producing productively, and keep them on track, KPI'd for 2 to 5 years? Like that's 30 days for me. Over and over and over again. I can take them just like that, right? And it's because of these systems that I've put in place where now it's not just one person that operates that system. It's not just one person with all that information and those ideas in their head. It's dispersed amongst the entire team, but no one can get leverage, right? The reason why is because the leverage is owned by me. I own the real assets. Like I'm the owner. Like they get to play with the assets, but I'm the owner of it. And my asset, and becoming more and more of the essence is what I'm trying to explain, how you take a liability, which is hiring and recruiting for most companies as a liability. They don't do it right. They don't invest in onboarding. They don't consistently recruit. And then they squawk and they go up and down in size when shit hits the fan and when they lose key players. Like, you set yourself up for it, right? So if you take the same principles of marketing and sales, never let your pipeline run dry, never let the team see the pipeline run dry, right? Always let them know, like, we're interviewing all the time, whether we need people or not. I'm going through the motions, and that's just our day-to-day operations now, right? And we did it all through COVID. We did, like, even if I don't need to hire, I've got so many people in the pipeline and so many contacts that I don't care if you leave tomorrow. I don't care if the fucking best sales rep leaves tomorrow. I've got 10 guys that I can roll through, retrain the exact same way I trained to get you the results. And you haven't hurt me. You've hurt yourself. And that's where you get in with that upper management, because at a certain point, when you start to pay 150, 200, 300, like, you get a different type of loyalty. You've slapped the golden handcuffs on them. They're not going somewhere else to make that money, right? So, like, again, that's the monopoly. Like, that's the game, right? So again, pay attention to those assets that you own, which are neglected in almost every contracting business. And it's a big, big mistake. So when we onboard, how consistently from one guy to the other was the experience of working for you? If you can get that, like your sales, so your client journey, think about your client journey. How important is it that the client experiences the same thing so they keep coming back for more, right? Same fucking thing with your onboarding, man. You're selling, you're making an offer. Like, it's identical. They're the exact same things. And if you control those two things, then, you know, the systems and stuff have a little bit more room. But like, when you get the system part of it, that's the golden triangle, right? Like, that's the triangle that you need to keep in order to maintain control, right? That's what you learn when you get to the control crisis, because it's not about like silos. A lot of people think it's like silos. It's about maintaining this golden triangle. All right. And that ratio in between it, again, is what allows you to get past that initial, from autonomy to control crisis, right? Where no person can take your business down, right? You've got the backups to the backups, right? So now we can really take a back step. And when really at that point, we're just, you know, the fundamentals of it is, as long as you can control, like, you can make it rain. All right. As long as you can, you know what your cost to invest in that marketing is, and you can keep that under control, pretty easy, like, to step away from a business, even at, you know, 2, 3, 4 million. Like, again, if I had to go backwards, I would actually, that's my, like, I'm downsizing the business to that. We did, you know, 14 and change last year. And I think we're going to clear more profit this year, but back into the perfect golden, you know, ratio, because it keeps me out of the business. Now I'll forfeit $200,000 or $300,000 to not have to go back and deal with any of that, right? Because it's stable, right? When you start to grow and then you get into the red tape, which I've hit many times, and I've decided, like, hey, I don't even want to go through that crisis. Like, I don't even want to go past that point. Like, I'm comfortable, you know, if we hit like top 8 figures, like, that's cool with me, right? I have other things that I want to work on and other businesses I want to build, that, again, it's having this thing exist as really an investment, right? So like, the returns are high enough to make it make sense. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, so it almost becomes like, what is the minimum viable organizational size?
Exactly. It's all lean.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So then you hit like, so, and to your point, it's anywhere between $4 to $7 million probably.
Well, it depends on your business. So like an HVAC business, you could easily take because of the personality types that you get in HVAC, electrical, like, they have a much more stable workforce. Okay. So like, unlike like seasonal workers, like roofers and stuff, where the turnover is high no matter what, right? Like, and you have, you know, a lower skill set, like an electrician, like an HVAC company. I've seen guys that have got 20, 30 million, $40 million companies, like, no burden to them. Everything's still the same though, right? Like you can run higher numbers in those businesses, right? It's just because the personality types fit easier. It's like the puzzle pieces fit nicer, right? Does that make sense? Like there's enough demand. Like general contractors have a hard time at a certain point when they hit the control crisis. So like their breaking points come, usually during the autonomy crisis, like when they're moving, trying to go above that $4 or $5 million. So right, like then it becomes that like you got to niche down. You got to be very specific. You got to have that market demand. You got to have a lot of things in place, right? A trade contractor, like I've got a little bit easier than a builder, for example, right? They've got a lot of variables. Or a general contractor, sorry, not a builder. Builders a little bit different. That becomes more of an investment game, right? But same things though. When you're building any core of a business, it always comes down to the same problems at the same levels, right? So if you take this and look at it, I mean, when you're starting out and you're small, like that 0 to $1 million is a bitch, right? Like that's the hardest part of getting your business, and guys spend years and years there, right? And then they kind of just taper off right here at the leadership crisis. They can never hire enough people to really take over their role. So they get stuck in the business for decades, right? And then they, some systems work, some things don't, but like it takes a while to get that. And really the whole time with the two things that they're kind of missing is the marketing and sales, right? Having like consistency with that, and then hiring and recruiting. That's what allows you to move quicker to that autonomy crisis. And then the last one is getting all the systems to work together with the people, right? Make sense?
Today was a really super harsh reality for me because every horrible thing that you mentioned today, I've done.
Yeah, we all have.
I'm having flashbacks. I'm not kidding.
Well, we a lot of times, and again, like I might say some things that like you're like, and I know I shock some people with like kind of the way I explain it. Like I really have had to work very hard at removing my like personal attachments to the business. All right. And like my emotional attachments. Okay. Because there was many years where like you talk shit about my guys, I would be, right in your face. And like I was running my business like a mom and pop. You know what I mean? Like I was that guy, and like my guys could come to me, and like I thought that was the right thing to do. Yeah, sure. If you want to stay under $1 million, you want to say $2-3 million, or you want to work 100 hours a week. But at a certain point, you realize that those systems don't serve the business. They don't grow the business. So, in terms of getting back to kind of, understanding this, like if every role in your business started off with very clear, job description with tasks that actually, and personality types that are fit to it, that you can enforce and hold accountable. All right. Well, how could you not replace yourself? You know what I mean? This is what we kind of been talking about all the time. So where guys get, I think where a lot of confusion is created is, and I know I had this experience, is like, I got to hire a project manager. I've never hired one. What do they do? All right. I can steal somebody else's job description and be like, they do this, right? I want my guy to do this. And how many of you done that? Right. I've probably given you some, but like
doing it right now.
Right.
And I stole that from you.
Right. So, but here's the thing. Every single one of those responsibilities, those roles, like you have to be prepared to actually teach and like to be able to distribute those and to be able to enforce those, to be able to account for those, to have KPIs. Because if you don't, all right, then you're designing your business to fail. All right. So for example, if you lose accountability between the sales and the production, all right, and there's no accountability there, what happens to you? Who puts out all those fires? Right. So if we don't have that layer of protection for ourselves. So for example, again, not all project managers are going to work out. Not all salespeople. Assume if you are growing your business properly. So like, let's say we want to be at $5 million in exit in 2 years. Okay. 8% of the people that you have with your business right now will be with you in 2 years. I promise you. If you want to grow 50%, if you want to grow 60%, if you want to get to that, like less than 8% of the people that are in your business right now will be with you. The reason for it is very simple. All right. Most human beings on planet Earth hate change. So the more you change, the more you bring these things in, you're going to get you're going to get back, like, again, you're going to have mutinies, you're going to have, you know, people that silently quit on you. You're going to have people that are working against you and you don't realize it. This is where that autonomy crisis starts, right? So like, and when people realize that you know the score, that's kind of the day that things change, right? Like when you can fully account for everybody's time and what they're doing, and you can hold them accountable and keep them on track, like that's your autonomy, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So I've done most of the talking about this. I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because I think a lot of you guys are probably in this boat where we're trying to do this overall. And again, trying to get both those systems up and running. I just wanted to share with you, and just give me one sec here. Recent one that we did with Dan Carr, who was awesome, by the way. Johnny's team totally bought in, just did the work. Our team worked together with his. So it's one thing for me to show you mine, and I feel like I'm doing that. And it's like, I love showing other people's stuff that they're doing. So let me show you his onboarding. So for the first, you know, you guys can kind of get the vision of it. And it's all within the same system. All right. But now every new employee basically that comes through is given a training portal. Okay. Within that training portal, we set it up to basically start to do the introduction, start to build, you know, what the company's about. Try to, you know, again, taking your maybe your employee manual and making it real. All right. So in here, we've again used our friends, the AI avatars, right? And we've created somewhat of an SOP for them. And the expectation here now is that they can pass a quiz for what we've just trained them. So now if they go out into the field and somebody asks them or calls them on a code of conduct issue, all right, do we have accountability? Of course. We have a certificate. They passed the test. They did the exam, right? They went through the training. Okay, so now I'm going to start to accumulate people that have had to put their time in and learn these things, okay? And they're going to consistently be taught the same thing across the board. That's standard, okay? And what it's not going to do is disrupt the rest of the team. And then hopefully what Johnny's doing as well is he's going to set him up with a buddy that's going to help to onboard them. Now, this training can be dripped out. So again, the ideal kind of perfect time that I had, besides like your initial documents and like your compliance, safety, all those kind of things, like obviously they need to be done, you know, promptly, but like the other things, you know, can be done dripped out, like 15 minutes a day. You know, we do like cross training and training. So like everyone gets trained how to use the role former. Everybody that works for us, from like our managers, our operation manager, they've all been trained how to do role former. Okay. Only one guy in the whole company operates it, but everybody knows how to operate it. Everybody's gone through the testing. Everybody's done the testing here. And then they got tested on site with the practical. Like, could they actually do the job? Okay. So, and again, for most of you guys that are hiring for these roles, we're going to set more and more of these modules up. So it's branded to your business. And again, it takes that edge off. It gives you that advantage. It gives you that better look at it. And then when something changes in your field, we're going to program our guys to start to solve the problems themselves. Okay. So a detail changes or a lesson learned or a problem happened. What do? How do we manage that? We get them to do the lesson learned. We create a training because it takes no time now. It used to be a bitch where you'd have to shoot videos and all that. We can totally pass that now. And you've got a world-class asset that you're building. So when someone comes in to buy your business, what do you think they're going to see?
Something turnkey that they have in place. They don't have to figure out themselves.
That's right. And could this be the difference?
Most of them don't know it. Who's buying them don't know the back end of it.
Totally. So again, you can hand this whole thing off, and you, the owner, doesn't get stuck in the business, right?
No. It makes you so much more valuable.
Totally. You've just turned a liability into an asset, because liability is your workforce. Like on paper, traditionally, contracting businesses don't get paid for people. Okay. They get paid for the contracts they have on backlog. All right. Because everybody knows that when that company
Right.
gets bought, they're going to lose 40% to 50% of those people. But if you have a system that allows you to replenish them, and you have like the, you know, the database of all those hires, all right, like those are the two major assets that you're talking about here. It's just like your customer journey. You've got that totally knocked down, right? It's actually easier to invest here than delivering to your customer, believe it or not. I know it sounds backwards,
I
right?
do, but maybe it's a silly question.
Sure.
What platform do you use to create customer portals? I mean, I'll have to ask Chat
No, you have this.
I have no
No.
idea.
You,
Huh?
this is the same system. Everybody has it here at Contractor. It's a Contractor AI suite. You have this.
Oh,
So
it's the same.
it's the same
Okay.
thing. Patty, this is what we're
Okay.
building for you. Like you're looking at what we're building for you,
Oh my God.
right? So when someone
I
gets
don't even
hired,
know how to take the first step. I'm doing so many things. It's like,
I told you got to take this. Let's get one thing, but the onboarding part of this, all right, is what you're going to get. So like you've got ProHire, all right? When we hire someone, now that's why I've been pushing on the onboarding, because we create these videos. It goes right in the same system, same platform, right? And you don't need to learn even how to use it. I mean, I prefer you did, but like ultimately we've been delegating it to what? Your staff, right?
yeah.
And did you notice who I delegated it to and who I'm enforcing it on? Do you know why I
Oh
did that?
yeah. Yeah.
Right? Who's going to have the problem with production? Who's going to, like, you know, you're putting the asset in the place, and it's leverage. I'm taking away the leverage, right? If
Yeah.
he knows that you've got 10 people, 25 people sitting there trained and ready to go, all right, well, first of all, he's going to, you know, get work done faster, I would say, right? You'd have less reasons not to get stuff done, but it also, again, sends a very clear message, right? So it'll work out. And when he sees the onboarding stuff, again, does anybody want to start their own business now? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Well, it just seems easier to stick with you now at this point.
Yeah.
Because you're taking away that big burden from them, right?
Yeah.
Any other
Love it.
questions? Because I gotta wrap up. I got a call actually with your team now. No? Okay. All right, guys.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yep. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jay. Thanks, guys.